No.
Okay, cool. Just making sure. All right, cool. It's going.
All right, welcome everybody to the latest episode of Amateur Theory. We're on like 6 now.
I do not know for sure, actually. 6
We've
sounds
lost
good, though.
count.
Let's go with
Yeah.
6. Yeah, 6 sounds good.
Before we get into it, I just kind of want to mention that we have started actually publishing these. So it's you can now find us on YouTube. You can find us on Spotify. You can find us on SoundCloud, and a litany of other ones, actually, which I'll try to post in the description if you're watching the YouTube channel. And the reason we just started doing that is we wanted to have a couple episodes, lined up before we started putting things out. So by the time you're listening to this, you're probably like a month behind, just about.
Yeah, about.
But I don't think. Hopefully these don't become dated. These are all old movies, so it shouldn't matter too much. Also, I got a new microphone, so hopefully, the audio is better.
Wanted to catch up with me.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll see. But all right, let's get into it. This week we watched the movie Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Well, technically, just The Last Airbender. There's no Avatar, this title. And I'm wondering if that's because I'm wondering if that's because James Cameron's Avatar came out like the year before. And I guess they didn't want to confuse anybody. But,
so we watched The Happening last week, and so we thought, let's watch another Shyamalan.
Let's watch this film right after that.
Yeah. And it turns out that this made The Happening look good. Like, I'm actually really curious about, because I grew up watching Avatar as a kid, and
I
did not.
I've never seen
and
it before.
As I was watching this movie, I was thinking, like, how are you supposed to know what's going on if you haven't seen the TV show? Like, I do not understand how they expect anyone to understand anything that's happening, despite the fact that the entire movie is exposition. Like, the entire movie, every second. Like, they do something, and they're like, the reason we did this is because the spirit fish live in the... And then just go on and on and on and on. And, oh, my God.
Oh, yeah, that guide of Show Don't Tell, completely just thrown out the window. It's just... Okay, so as someone who's never watched the show, I mean, I definitely, like, know about it. And I felt like I knew the basic things, like people could, like, bend, like, elements.
Right.
But not much more beyond that. So I think I kind of got a good grasp. So there's 4 nations, but I already knew that. And the Fire Nation just decided to be dicks and like invaded everyone else. And then the Airbenders all died, I suppose. But there's a legend of one certain Airbender, the Avatar, who is supposed to master all of the elements, and then he will come and save the day. That's the basic plot, I think.
Yeah. I mean, that's more or less it. It was really interesting that the way they did this, because a lot of the story beats are taken directly from the show. Like, this movie is just basically the first season of the show. So they took all the biggest story beats and they just smashed it all into a movie. But then they made some bizarre changes. So, like, the main character in the show, his name is Aang. And for whatever reason, they decided to call him Ong. And, like, why? Like,
they didn't see the show. They read his name on, like, a Wikipedia article, and they're
honestly,
like,
that's kind of what I felt like. Like, they read the Wikipedia synopsis, and they were like, okay, we can make this movie. I guess this will be fun.
Yeah.
And by having all they took all, like, the most exciting parts of the TV show, and they made it so that, there's always something happening in this movie. There's always some action sequence of some sort or something. But by doing that, they cut out basically all character development. So there's none of that.
Nope.
And they took out, like, anything interesting about, like, the character relationship, anything that's not an action sequence, they just took out. And so it made this movie, and the way they tried to get around that is, like we were saying, they just explain everything.
Yeah,
It's like a fight and they're like, the reason we're having this fight is like it could go on and on and on.
Yeah, like
And
the girl character, Katara, is that her name? This whole
yeah,
movie is just her like doing voiceover, explaining things that we don't see. Like,
yeah,
oh yeah, this happened, and it's like, all right, cool. I wish I could have seen that, maybe.
yeah. And then the other thing that really puts this movie into like bottom tier, and I guess we were talking about this beforehand. This of all the movies we've seen, and we've purposely sought out bad movies. Like we're watching bad movies on this podcast. This might be the worst one, honestly. Like
Oh,
this might
this
be the worst one that we've seen. It is like, and I think what really puts it down at that really bottom level is the acting.
the
That
act
kid
is god
should
awful.
not ever be in a movie ever. Like he,
I don't think
not
anyone in
none of the
this movie
actors were
should have
good,
ever been in a movie
but
again.
it's. I mean, I don't know if you felt this way, but especially Ong. Ong was so terrible in this movie. Like the entire time, I got the sense that he didn't really know what he was saying. He just like got a script and was just like reading it, but he didn't have no awareness of like how that fit in with the film. Like
Which very well might have been the case.
it was, and the problem is that the in the show, one of the reasons it's so good is because the characters are so likable, like all of them. And like some of the like most popular guy people, and then also the show was like really lighthearted because I mean it's a kids show. Like there's a lot of along with the action, there's a lot of humor. Every time the movie tries to do humor, it falls super flat. Like there's not even one time where you're like have a like there's they keep some jokes in
I don't know,
like
so flat. I don't even remember jokes. I don't remember them trying to be funny. Like,
so this would be like the you have to excuse me if there's any like serious Avatar fans watching. I'm gonna butcher. I haven't seen this show for years and years. Like I was a kid, but like the flying bison, right? Like hits Sokka with his tail. Most of the humor is driven by Sokka, which is actually true
is
for
that
the
the
show
brother?
too. Yeah,
The
the brother.
okay,
And
yeah.
so like he hits him and he kind of falls down. It's like, oh. But the way that they play it all so straight in the movie, like there's no over exaggerated, like in the way you can't have a cartoon. So it just kind of seems like this animal just hit someone and he fell and it's like I could tell it was supposed to be for humor, but it didn't seem humorous. It was just like, oh, that sucks. Guy got hit by a tail. Like it was.
Well, I mean, the acting's so flat that like you can't tell if are they trying to be serious, are they trying to crack a joke, are they feeling passionate? It's just kind of all blends together.
Yeah, and it's like what I was saying before is all the characters are so likable in the show. Aang in particular is like this very, very like energetic, happy guy. That's like part of his character. He's just like super happy-go-lucky, kind of like a chill, very zen. Kind of plays into the fact that he's like a young monk. But in this one, he's just serious all the time, and like,
Yeah, I don't think he
he's very
smiles ever.
unlikable. Yeah, like he's like, I don't care about this kid. Just get him off the screen, please. Like that's kind of how I felt the whole time. Another fan favorite, is the Zuko and Iroh, right? So like Dunkel, and in the show, the Iroh comes off as like this like really like sage, like wise guy who's also like very congenial and like like very much like a father figure, which they tried to get across in this movie, but I again it just doesn't
Kind
really
of.
through.
Well, he just
Like
tells Zuko, he's like, look at these pretty girls. Find a
right,
pretty
yeah, like,
girl. That's all
he
I
always comes off as
remember.
like a creepy like old guy more than anything else. Like that was the main vibe I got from him. Which again, like there was so many baffling things about this because the movie clearly had a budget, like clearly, like this was not like a super cheapo movie, but yet they put zero effort into.
$150 million.
Oh my god, like you could have taken away 50 million of those dollars and just put it into find better actors, and you would have had a better movie. Like you could get rid of all those special effects, like just get better people, maybe hire a better script writer.
No,
Like
certainly. Like this is the thing. Like I don't know if they could do much with the script because the
The
script
script
is
really
god
bad.
awful.
Yeah, it's really really bad. So
It's
yeah, I
just
was thinking about like,
exposition after
yeah.
exposition and then an action scene, and it's so terribly written. Like, did
You know what?
did an editor look at this? Did they get an editor even?
Until it's been disproven, I'm going to go with a theory that they looked at the Wikipedia article and they're like, let's make a movie. They don't have a script. They had a Wikipedia article and they're like, let's make a movie. Let's do this.
That makes
So,
everything make so much more sense. That
this is exactly how I'd expect a Wikipedia movie with a $150 million budget to come out. This is exactly how I would expect it.
yeah,
It's just
just
bizarre.
and the whole thing, like, it just feels so passionless. Like, it didn't, like, while I was watching the film, I didn't get a sense that anyone involved, like, actually cared whatsoever about making a good product. Like,
Yeah.
like I keep using this word flat, and that's just what the whole thing is. It's so boring. like, like the
Yeah.
acting's not bad in an amusing way, like in Battlefield Earth at the Happening. Like, it's just
Yeah,
bad
because
act.
yeah, because in that the bad acting is comes from like this overreaction. Everything is like so crazy and like and then the direction, like the camera direction has like these crazy angles and everything's just weird. And so it's like even though that's bad, it's bad movie making. It's interesting. It's like
Yeah.
whoa, like look at this,
It's
this
baffling in an amusing way.
right, this there it just like if you can imagine. First of all, the movie looks too good in terms of like the sets and like stuff for that to be funny, right? It doesn't look like a cheap movie. It looks like a very like expensive movie. The camera angles and stuff are just fine. Like they're competent. They're not doing anything special. They're conveying what's happening on the screen. The and the acting is not like overly dramatic. It's like the opposite. It's these people who like I mean, they're like reading a
Yeah.
script. Like it's just a bunch of people in costumes just hanging around, and they're just reading a script. And like, I mean, seriously, and there's no story per se. There's just like different scenes of people reading scripts, and you have that for 2 hours, and then that's the movie.
I will say that the cinematography does get kind of weird during the action scenes because for some reason they try to do like it all in one take, the action scenes. Like there are no cuts. It'll be on one character and they're doing stuff, and everyone else in the background isn't really doing anything. But the camera doesn't cut, it just moves to another person and they start doing stuff. And
Yeah.
it has a bizarre sense of flow. Uh
So let's talk about the choreography really quick, because that's another thing about this movie that I don't know how much it bothered you, but for fans of the show, this was one of the biggest complaints I remember when it first came out, was how bad the choreography, like the fight choreography was. Um, and so just for one of the cool things about the show is that you really got the sense that first of all, the show is really well researched. So all of the fight moves are based on like, I believe like some kind of real martial arts. Like
oh, okay.
they're not just like random move your arms or around and then things happen. And what they did a really good job of making it like look like this character's actions is controlling the environment around them. It's like hard to imagine or hard to explain.
So their movements seem to
Correspond with what's
yeah,
happening.
correspond to
So
okay.
like if like I mean in a very like the most basic sense, it's a little bit more flowery movement in the show than. But I didn't research all this martial arts stuff. I don't know. But like just as an example, if I like push out like a fireball's coming out of my hand, right? Like there's a direct correlation between my hand moving and the fireball coming out. Like you can say I caused this. In the movie, it seems like they're just doing these like little dances, and
Oh, and
then
things
completely
happen.
unrelated stuff is happening. Like, oh, there's a rock now, and it's like kind of floating around, and it's doing all these crazy things. And so like it's the action sequences don't feel like action sequences. They feel like dance numbers where the environments are kind of battling it out in the background as that's happening. Like that's the best way I could describe it. Like it's very unsatisfying and not at all like. Again, like there's clearly a good budget in this film, but because the fight choreography was so bad, all the action sequences are like also boring. So you have this boring exposition, boring talking, and then you get these boring fight scenes. Like everything about this, oh man.
My I'm just remembering the one part where it's like you see like 5 or 6 earthbenders like together, like all choreographed doing the same move. And they go like ha, and this like rock like floats across the screen. It's like, wow, did you need like 5 guys doing all of that just to move the rock?
So the way I watched this movie, I actually made it a double feature for myself because just I wanted to watch something good after this. Like I had to watch so I watched this back to back with Kill Bill, and like the difference is just night and day. Like oh man, like so that movie, the choreography is awesome. Like you could tell like there was like a lot of effort put into making these fight scenes look really good, and then the dialogue, is there's almost no exposition in the dialogue, like almost none. Like no, well, I guess there's a little bit in the beginning actually.
Well,
She kind of narrates
she
like
narrates the animated scenes, but it's also interesting, and the animation's like cool, and
but
like
most of the time, like most of the movie, it's not that like someone's like, here's what I want to kill you for this reason. It's like they'll have a flashback and then you'll see someone do something bad and you're like, oh, I get it. As an audience member, like, of course that makes you angry, so now they need to fight, right? Instead of being like, you made me angry because you did bad thing, right? And it's like, if you're not too familiar with like storytelling in the movie format, the show don't tell is like one of the number one things you learn about movies. It's why they're different than books, right? Like part of the difference between making a book or a movie is the fact that in a movie you don't want to tell people things, you want to show
yeah,
it to
you have a camera, you can
yeah,
convey a lot
it's a
of
visual
information with
medium,
that.
like make use of it.
Yeah,
And this, yeah, what were you gonna say?
and I'll go with this. Like exposition in and of itself, I don't think is necessarily bad. Like there are ways to like put exposition into a story that's kind of like fluid. Like for example, let's say you have a character who like joins a group and he knows nothing, and then like since he's new, like in real life you would have things explained
Yeah,
to you, and then with the audience you would understand. Like that's kind of like natural and fits in well. But this like everything is exposition, and it's just clumped into there in like weird awkward ways. We don't ever see anything. Like what's his name? Zuko, the fire dude who got ostracized from his kingdom, but
right.
still hunting a Ong. I'm gonna say Ong. There's just one part where like he's like, oh, with his uncle, I think, and he's like, kid, come over here. It's like, do you know what happened to the Fire Lord's son? And the kid's like, yeah, this, and this. He's like, yeah, that's what happened.
Just the normal conversations we have.
And I was like, shit, that actually sounds somewhat interesting. I wish I could like see that in a good movie.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I could always like go find the TV show and watch it. And I'd probably like it because I thought there were interesting ideas in this movie.
Yeah,
They just
everything good about this movie, as little as it is. Yeah, the idea is like the concept behind it is all from the show, and the show's good. Like I think it might be the best children's drama I've seen. And that's not to say I've seen every kid's show. Like, I like grow up so much, but
I mean,
the
I've
ones
only
I've
ever
seen,
heard
I
things
would
about
say
the
it's the
show.
best one.
Yeah, I've only ever heard good things about the show, and I've only ever heard bad things about this movie.
You know what?
So extreme opposites.
So I saw this when it came out in theaters, years ago, and I remember thinking it was really bad then. Yeah. But like when I was going back to it, after watching The Happening, and The Happening, was bad, but I was like, this is kind of entertaining the whole way through. Like I wonder if Avatar is really as bad as I remember. Maybe it was just because I had too high expectations or something, and so I needed to just like, if I lowered them, I'd see like, oh, like this movie has flaws, but it could be charming. It's like no, it's worse. It's worse than you remembered. Somehow, it actually came out worse. Like I don't.
Yeah, just everything in this is so off. And like the editing. There are like scene transitions in this movie that are so bizarre. Like, so there's this one part where one of the fire dudes is talking to the fire lord, and he's like, "So you think this blue spirit person is my son?" There's like 5 seconds of silence, and the guy just goes like, "Yes," and the scene immediately cuts to something else. It is so jarring. Like, who in their right mind would like think to edit a scene like that? So I looked up the editor, a guy by the name of Conrad Buff,
Uh,
and he won an Academy Award for film editing for Titanic. I have I have no idea. Just the
I mean,
world is a
maybe again.
fascinating place. I don't know how things like this happen.
I guess with the way this movie is structured, where, like I said, if you took away all the explaining, the scenes would just be like one unrelated scene after another, right? Like there's no relation. There's not like this happened, therefore this happened, right? Like it's like makes sense of progression. It's just like completely unrelated event, completely unrelated event, completely unrelated event, all the way to the end. And so, like, how do you edit that to make it,
Yeah,
like at a certain point, it's just like, yeah,
he
you
might
kind
have
of
been
messed up at the first part where you made the story. Like, it's hard to, like, however creative your editing gets, like, how do you make this good? I don't know.
You said this adapts about the first season, like the entire
Yeah.
first season of the show, and I'm guessing that's like 20 episodes or something.
Yeah, I don't know the exact number, but
I mean, but like this
yeah.
movie's like 100 minutes, like an hour and 40 minutes. So I guess like yeah, if you're trying to adapt an entire season's worth of TV into an hour and 40 minutes, like the only way to get everything in there is probably exposition.
Yeah, and I mean, just cut stuff. You don't need all those scenes. Like, just figure out like the 2 or 3 most like interesting parts, and just make that the movie. Like, I mean, the prince's relationship with his father, which I really didn't like how they did this in the movie, because in the show, like the father's like a dick, like he's clearly like an evil guy. In this one, he like oscillates between like he cares about his son, but he still needed to ban him for insulting the guy, which wasn't really explained in depth at all, but just that there's some kind of thing that happened, and so he had to be banned. But he, said like he needs to do this to capture the avatar, and then he can get back in the show. And again, I apologize if I get this wrong because I haven't seen this for years, but my understanding is that when the Fire King banned the sun, like capturing the avatar wasn't like a realistic thing he saw the sun as doing, right? Like it wasn't like, oh, okay, like you need to do this. It was more like, oh, we'll just tell him this so that he gets out of here. We really don't want him.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, in the movie, the king is just like everyone else, so boring. Like
Yeah.
all I remember from him is he's just walking around or sitting and just talking to like the other commander dude, just like, yep, yep, yeah. Oh, that okay, cool. Like, so it's like, I guess he's angry with him. He's like, yeah, I don't like my son. You know. Yeah.
Can I actually give a shout out to because there was one actor who I thought was good, and it was like the general guy. And he's like the only one I recognized too. Like I recognize him from other movies. I don't know the actor's name, but do you know
The
what I'm
fire
talking about?
general guy.
Yeah, like he was the only one. And again, his lines were terrible because it's a terrible movie. But at least he every single time he acted, you could tell he was like trying. He was the only one I felt like he was like trying at all. And so like I can't really say he carried the movie because this movie wasn't carried. It was just like it was on the ground the whole time. But he's the closest thing. If every actor played as well as he did, this movie would have been elevated to. It still would have been bad, but it would have been elevated past where it is now. So props to him. Again, I don't know the actor's name, but if
I can
you
barely remember the dude. That's might have been his character. I don't know.
yeah, you
It's a
don't remember.
very unmemorable movie.
Yeah, Yeah, when it comes to like remembering specifics, like specific scenes, I remember so little. Like it all just blurs together. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. All the drama is manufactured. Like, yeah, there was okay. So there was one scene where like Ong is they're kind of just hanging out with the trio, the original trio, and Ong's just like, "Hey, I want to go to this air temple."
Oh
Right?
yeah, where he came from, right? Or where he was
So this is the
raised or
second air
trained?
temple. So
Oh,
the
there's
first air
another
temple, they already went, and they already found everyone was dead. And so he was like, "Oh, I'm bummed." So then they walk, and he's like, "Well, I want to go to the other one." Right? And they're like, "Don't do that, Ong." And he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna go." And then he goes. And then there's this like guy who's like, he's like, "Oh, I am," he like fools Ong for a little bit, for
Oh
like
yeah.
2 minutes. He's like, "Oh yeah, like I can't remember exactly what they say, but something like, we've been waiting for you for a long time." And then it's like, "Oh, but actually, dun dun dun, double cross." And it was like, why? Why did you need to fool him? Like, it was literally 30 seconds of dialogue between you two. You could have jumped right into the capturing the avatar. Like, this whole like facade thing was like a waste of time. And I mean, like, again, I don't remember the show super well, but I'm sure in the show like that happened, but there was like some plausible reason. Maybe they had to convince him to go to a certain place, or like they had to talk him into, like, there was some reason for it. But in like so many scenes in this movie, they just have it to have it. Like, they just added
Yeah.
it because, like, oh, this happened in this show, we must have this in the movie then. And it's like, no, just cut it
It's
out.
like,
Like,
oh
just take
yeah,
it.
or like gotta have this happen just so we can get to the next scene. Just
Yeah.
yeah, it's
So
like
yeah, I don't know how much there is more to say about this. It sucks. Don't
yeah,
watch it. In all the other movies, we've been like, if you like bad movies, maybe like just don't watch it. just
yeah.
don't watch it. It's
This
not worth it.
no, this is not so bad. It's good. This is just god awful. This
Yeah.
yeah, it's just it's so boring. Like like I had to like really force myself to like finish this. I was like, you can do it, man, you can do it. But just by the end, like I was like, I don't care like what's going on. I don't know what and like
But
and
okay.
so this is the thing. So Shyamalan directed this,
Mm.
and I think this was his first movie that was kind of like not a thriller, because this is kind of like what, like kind of like epic scale fantasy type of thing.
Yeah.
Everything he did before this was a thriller, like The Sixth Sense, Unbreakable, Signs, The
Right.
Village, The Happening, and it just doesn't seem like he's maybe suited for this material because it's like on a
Do
completely
you think
different
he even
spectrum from
tried
what he was
though?
doing
Or
before.
do you think this was like, let me get a chick from Nickelodeon real quick, make a stupid movie, and then like,
Yeah, it
like
might be that too. But
I,
yeah,
I,
he's just seems so unfit for the material, or maybe he just like didn't try at all, like he just didn't care.
we joked about the Wikipedia thing and everything, but actually, like, I'm really thinking about it now. So like the decision to change your name from Aang to Ong, right? I was thinking like maybe like, oh, what, like that was an interesting choice they made. I'm wondering, was that a choice? Did they actually just read the script and be like, oh yeah, Ong, like, and just had no understanding whatsoever of the source material?
Well, this
And
is also the thing. There's more reasoning that can back that up. So
yeah,
as far as I know, like I haven't seen this show, but I definitely know like kind of about it. Everyone in the show is Asian, right? Or
yeah,
most people. Everyone in this movie is like white,
except
or I
for the
guess like
Fire Nation, which are
yeah,
all
and then you're
Asian, which
Indian.
is
So
interesting.
like
But
so he read he read the Wikipedia, didn't realize everyone was Asian. He's like, oh yeah, white people. That'll work.
well, I mean, that's just Hollywood, though. It's a little bit less like that recently, a little bit less. But I mean, even if they did know they're Asian, they might have just gotten white actors because that's the Hollywood way for the most part. But I get what you're saying.
Yeah. Uh, just yeah, I don't think I have any more words. Like
Yeah, there's not that much. Just, I mean, it sucks. Everything about it sucks. and that's it. If you
Like,
get the
don't.
inkling that you like want to watch something about this story, watch the TV show. You know,
Yeah.
I haven't seen it in a long time. Actually, when I was watching this movie, I was kind of thinking like, I kind of want to see, because I don't remember the show being this bad. So like, I want to see how they did this to see what the difference was for like certain parts. Um, but anyway, I guess that's all to say there is about that. But I'll end um, with not about the movie, but the this show. Amateur Theory show. Now that we're posting, I'm gonna, say give us a like, subscribe, everything else that you're supposed to say at the end of these. I'm sure I'll get better with it with time as we do this more and more. But this is my first. Studies have shown that you're more likely to subscribe if I tell you to subscribe. So subscribe.
Do it. Do it.
But okay, thanks for listening. This is Amateur Theory, and we're out.
See you guys.